Hey there. Today we're discussing a topic that's not just important, it's getting more urgent by the day. If you've been watching the world even a little bit lately, you've probably picked up on the fact that things are feeling more tense, more unstable, and more unpredictable than they have in a long time. Whether it's the rising cost of living, political arguments turning into full-blown culture wars, or those sudden flash protests showing up in city centers and spreading like wildfire, there's this growing sense that the next big disruption could start anywhere and spiral fast. This is why so many people are starting to ask the right questions, like, how do I get ahead of this? Or, what if things start breaking down right where I live? And if you haven't asked yourself those questions yet, or if you have but you've been putting off the answers because it's uncomfortable or overwhelming, then I need you to hear this. The window to prepare is still open, but it's closing fast. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what you can do right now to strengthen your home, gather the right supplies, sharpen your situational awareness, and make sure you and the people you care about don't get caught flat-footed when things start unraveling. And if you're serious about getting ready or just want a place to start, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment with what's worrying you the most, and share this video with someone who's been meaning to get their act together. Because we're going to cover a lot, and trust me, you're going to want to hear every word of it. One of the most important forms of self-protection, especially in times of growing tension, is simply paying close attention to what's happening around you, instead of hoping that peace and calm will last forever. That might sound like common sense, but I promise you that most people fail to do it because they're distracted by the daily grind, by social media arguments, by work or personal commitments, or even by the naive belief that trouble always happens somewhere else and not where they live. If you've ever found yourself blindsided by a local protest that blocked traffic for hours, or if you didn't realize your city council was debating a controversial policy until the demonstrations were on your doorstep, then you know exactly how easy it is to get caught by surprise. One of the key strategies here is monitoring multiple sources of information, because we want to avoid being reliant on just one news channel or one social feed. We also want to compare what mainstream outlets say to what local bloggers, local radio, or even specialized apps are reporting. Sometimes local radio will talk about new protest permits being filed, or a suspicious spike in petty crimes. And by cross-referencing that with online forums or your neighborhood watch group's text chat, you get a bigger picture and a sense of how worried people are. When you see a lot of folks discussing concerns about a certain intersection, or you notice more frequent sightings of vandalism or unusual gatherings, you can conclude that tension is simmering. Another aspect of awareness is noticing patterns in everyday life. And that means you might have to shift from a relaxed mindset to one that periodically scans your surroundings. Imagine you're walking down your block and you see a certain van parked on the corner 2 days in a row, with someone inside who never seems to leave. Or maybe you see that new graffiti has popped up overnight, and it's not the typical graffiti you used to ignore, but rather something that signals hostility or a call to action that's more ominous. You don't have to be paranoid, but you do want to mentally catalog these odd details because they may be the subtle indicators that something bigger is brewing. Talk to your neighbors too and ask if they've noticed anything out of the ordinary, because maybe they've also been seeing odd comings and goings after dark, or they heard rumors that a protest is planned for the weekend near the local mall. You can then bring this information together in a group chat or a simple community meeting, because shared awareness often translates to being better prepared to make decisions on whether to stay or go, or whether to lock down for a night if you sense trouble creeping in. When you become the kind of person who's informed and engaged, you're less likely to be one of those people stuck in a panic because you missed every warning sign. By building the habit of scanning the neighborhood and listening to various media outlets, you end up having more time to respond and more time to put your contingency plans in motion. And all it takes to start is a willingness to open your eyes, pay attention, and piece together those seemingly small details that can add up to a critical warning. You don't even have to completely overhaul your routine. It can be as simple as checking local forums each morning, or having a casual conversation with your neighbor when you bump into them while getting the mail. That little bit of extra awareness means you'll detect rumbles before they become earthquakes. Once you know how to spot threats before they come banging on your door, the next big step is making your home and your immediate surroundings tougher against intrusion or vandalism. While there's a temptation to imagine you need thousands of dollars in high-tech security to accomplish that, the reality is that many people can do a lot just by reinforcing the basics, like door frames, windows, locks, and visibility. I always like to start with the entry points, because so many doors are installed with short screws or flimsy strike plates that basically make them just about as secure as a normal interior closet door. But if you switch out those short screws for longer ones and install a top-notch deadbolt with a reinforced strike plate, you've automatically made it harder for anyone to kick in that door. Windows can be trickier, but you can add shatter-resistant film to ground floor glass. While that film won't turn a window into a bulletproof barrier, it does hold broken glass together so that someone can't just take one swing and slip right in. You can also get creative with little things like planting dense bushes or thorny shrubs right under your windows, because if someone sees that they might have to climb through a bunch of thorny plants to break in, that might send them looking elsewhere. Lighting is also an extremely effective deterrent. And I'm not talking about leaving all your lights on all night so that it looks like you're awake. Instead, think about installing motion-activated lights around your property that illuminate the yard or driveway if someone starts snooping around. Most folks who are up to no good prefer darkness and anonymity, and a bright light coming on at 2 in the morning is usually enough to make them reconsider. Beyond your own home, you can extend that mindset to your entire block by encouraging neighbors to join in on a communal watch system. Or at the very least, share a group text for instant alerts. If a suspicious car is circling the block, or if you caught someone trying to test door handles on parked cars, you can let the group know so that folks remain on the lookout, turn on extra lights, or call for help. When everyone is looking out for one another, it's far less likely that a random intruder or vandal will find easy targets on your street, because a house that's visibly secured and part of an organized neighborhood is a house that troublemakers want to avoid. The other part of fortification is all about making your home appear lived in and well-maintained, even when you're gone. Pay attention to the basics, like cutting your lawn, picking up mail or packages, and leaving a car in the driveway if possible. You want to project the message that people are actively present, keeping an eye on things, and ready to respond. And if you have some extra funds, consider installing cameras or a smart doorbell that logs footage and alerts you right away if something happens. But make sure to keep them updated and tested, because a neglected system is almost like having no system at all. Doing these things doesn't turn your home into an impenetrable fortress, but it does drastically increase the difficulty level for anyone seeking to cause trouble, which might be all you need to encourage them to move on. We can't ignore how quickly people empty store shelves once a crisis, or even a rumor of a crisis hits. Whether it's an imminent snowstorm, a hurricane, or a protest that spills into looting and disrupts normal commerce. This is where having essential supplies can make a huge difference between riding out the crisis comfortably or being forced to scramble with the crowd. Water comes first, because if a water main is sabotaged or utilities are shut down by civil disorder, then you don't want to be that person desperately searching for bottled water at the last second. Aim for about a gallon per person per day, and keep at least a couple of weeks' worth if you can manage it, though I know that's space and budget dependent. If you can't store that much, at least have the basics like water filtration tablets or a small filtration system that lets you purify questionable water from a stream or collected rainwater. Food storage is the next big pillar. Non-perishables like canned soups, canned beans, peanut butter, tuna, and freeze-dried or dehydrated meals are all strong choices. If you want to avoid cooking altogether, you can also include things like energy bars that provide a quick calorie boost with zero preparation. You want to have enough to stay fed for anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, and that number can go higher if you have the space and want to prepare for extended scenarios. Also, it's useful to include items that boost morale and keep things from feeling bleak, such as coffee, tea, or small sweets. In stressful times, having a little normalcy in your meals can keep spirits up more than you might expect. Aside from food and water, plan for other vital areas. Think about how you'd manage hygiene if garbage pickup halted, or if you couldn't flush your toilet because of water scarcity. Having extra soap, hand sanitizer, feminine hygiene products, toilet paper, heavy-duty trash bags, and maybe a portable toilet setup is not something to put off. Also, if anyone in your household depends on prescription meds, try to keep at least a small buffer supply if your doctor and insurance allow it. In addition, having pain relievers, antihistamines, and antidiarrheal medicine can be a lifesaver, literally, if overburdened hospitals or pharmacies can't address your needs right away. Don't forget a basic stash of batteries and flashlights for lighting. And if your budget allows, a small solar charger or a battery bank so that your phone or radio can keep running, even if the power is out for several days. And, crucially, always keep in mind that all these supplies need to be rotated and checked periodically. If you let your stash sit for years without replacing outdated items or checking that your rechargeable batteries still hold charge, you could be in for a rude surprise when you finally need them. Even if you're well informed, even if your home is decently reinforced, and even if you've got a healthy supply of food and water, there might be times when none of that is enough if people with bad intentions decide to escalate. This is why personal defense is such a major factor in any serious conversation about civil unrest. I know it can be uncomfortable to talk about because it means acknowledging that you may have to hold your own in a confrontation. The key is to approach self-defense rationally and ethically, and to do so well in advance of needing it. This includes taking stock of what's legal in your area and what you feel comfortable using. If you want to start with less than lethal options, consider pepper spray or a stun gun, which can deter an aggressor without lethal force. Keep them where they're quickly accessible, not buried in the bottom of your bag, and practice how to unclip or deploy them, because fumbling around in a panic can cost precious seconds. Some people decide that a firearm is the right fit for them, and if that's you, there's no substitute for professional training, especially in safe handling, marksmanship, and scenario-based drills that simulate real pressure. You don't want to buy a firearm and tuck it away without practice, because not only is that risky, but it can give you a false sense of security. Another angle of self-defense is the ability to handle yourself physically if it comes down to a close-quarters situation. This might mean taking classes in a practical martial art or a self-defense system that teaches you how to break free from grabs, how to defend against strikes, and how to look for opportunities to disengage safely. Even basic moves can be invaluable if you're in a situation where you can't rely on a tool or if you get caught off guard. Being relatively fit also helps you run or maneuver as needed. Simply having better endurance than someone else can give you a chance to escape without further confrontation. Mental preparation is critical too. It's one thing to watch action movies or read about self-defense online, and it's another to experience a genuine threat where you have to make split-second decisions. Try to talk through possible scenarios with your family or your close friends, including deciding under what circumstances you'd engage physically or brandish a defensive tool, so you're not making those decisions for the first time when adrenaline is pumping. Sometimes the best defense and the best plan is to leave, especially if unrest in your area grows too intense, or if utilities are shut down, or if your home becomes a target. That's where a bug-out bag, also known as a rapid mobility kit, becomes essential. The idea behind a bug-out bag is that you can grab it at a moment's notice and know you have the basics needed to survive for roughly 3 days, which is often enough time to get to a safer location or wait for immediate turmoil to subside. A good bug-out bag doesn't have to be gigantic, but it should include water, easy-to-prepare food, a basic first aid kit, a small shelter like a tarp or a lightweight tent, and a sleeping bag or some means of staying warm. You might also include a change of clothes that suits the climate, along with little extras like a lightweight stove if you need to boil water, a fire starter, and a compact flashlight or headlamp. The real trick is to keep everything organized so you can find it quickly, and to avoid overpacking with random items that you won't realistically use. Weight is a huge factor because if the bag is too heavy, you won't move efficiently if you have to hoof it on foot. You can apply the same concept to your vehicle, leaving a small set of supplies in the trunk, so that if you have to drive out in a hurry, you're not starting from scratch. This might include a couple of gallons of water, some protein bars, blankets, and a kit for basic car maintenance or repair, so you're not stranded if you get a flat tire or need a quick battery jump. Of course, if you anticipate needing to leave quickly, you should also try to keep your gas tank at least half full, because during emergencies, gas stations are notorious for running dry or becoming clogged with panic buyers. The beauty of a bug-out bag is that it removes hesitation when the time comes to decide whether to stay or go. If you keep all your crucial items scattered around the house, or if you haven't thought through the basics, you'll waste precious minutes gathering and second-guessing whether you have what you need. A prepared kit, on the other hand, speaks to you in that moment of indecision. It essentially says, "Grab me and let's go," we're all set. That kind of clarity can literally save your life if circumstances force you to evacuate in the middle of the night. When unrest spirals out of control, or even if it's just creeping dangerously close, you might decide that the wisest course is to get out, and at that point mobility itself becomes a survival skill. It's easy to assume that you'll just hop into your car and drive to a friend's place or a family cabin, but if the roads are blocked, or if law enforcement has created checkpoints, or if major intersections are jammed with fleeing residents, that plan can dissolve quickly. This is why it's so useful to map out not just one, but several routes away from your immediate neighborhood, with preference for side streets or back roads that the masses might overlook. To keep mobility an option, you should maintain your car in good working condition, because you don't want to discover a flat spare tire or a dead battery at the exact moment you need to leave under pressure. Try to find local roads that are less traveled, and see if those can lead you to a highway or an out-of-town route that avoids congested areas, because you'd be surprised how quickly main roads choke up in a panic. If you're in a more rural setting, maybe you've got dirt roads or Forest Service roads that skirt major population hubs, and it's worth exploring them in advance, since you don't want your first time on that road to be when you're in a hurry and uncertain about the terrain. You also want to consider communication plans if you're moving with a group. If you're traveling with a neighbor or friends, figure out how you'll stay in touch if you get separated. Maybe you invest in a couple of cheap walkie-talkies that have a decent range, or you have a set meeting place in case cell signals go down. And if you have to go on foot, it helps to have pre-selected rally points like a public park or a recognizable building, so that if things go sideways, everyone can gather there and figure out a next step. That way, if you can't rely on your phone's map or your car's GPS, you'll at least know some landmarks and have an offline plan. Every so often, it's smart to mentally rehearse. Picture the moment you realize your block is no longer safe, then imagine how you'd collect your family, your bag, and which door you'd go out of, where you'd park if you needed to load the car quietly, and so on. It seems dramatic to run these scenarios in your head, but rehearsing them now means you can act quickly and confidently under actual duress. No one wants to be stuck in traffic or forced into a bottleneck with a crowd of panicking people, so the sooner you move, the simpler your exit usually is. You might not always have the luxury of avoiding crowded places, especially if you live downtown or near a hotspot where demonstrations are common, or if you have no choice but to commute through an area that's experiencing unrest. So it pays to know how to handle yourself in large crowds that could suddenly shift from peaceful to volatile. One major factor is dressing in a way that doesn't align you with any particular side. So if you're just trying to pass through, you don't want your clothing or your signage to suggest you're part of an opposing group. Neutral colors and comfortable shoes are a smart choice because you might need to move quickly and you don't want to stand out. Pay attention to the crowd's mood. If you see tensions rising or sense an undercurrent of aggression, try to keep to the fringes where it's easier to step aside if things escalate, and always identify potential exits, whether that's a side street, an open doorway to a safe building, or even another route that loops around to your destination. If you find yourself in the thick of it and you spot an angry clash brewing between protesters and a countergroup, the best move for personal safety is typically to create distance, because nobody wins when you're caught in the middle of people throwing objects or confronting law enforcement. You also don't want to get trapped in a bottleneck because large crowds can surge without warning, and that crush of bodies can be incredibly dangerous. So keep your arms up or your hands near your chest if people start pushing, and if someone else falls, be aware that you might need to shift laterally to avoid getting pulled down. Tear gas and pepper spray are another hazard in these scenarios, so carrying simple protective items like a bandana or a set of goggles can go a long way to shield your face if you can't leave immediately. If approached by someone who demands to know your affiliation or tries to corner you, stay calm and talk in a respectful, concise way, explaining you're just trying to get through, that you're not looking for trouble, and you don't want to escalate any situation. Often the best approach is a polite, almost apologetic demeanor, because in a frenzied environment, people are on high alert for threats or confrontation, and you don't want to be mistaken for an instigator. By being aware, by staying near the edges, and by keeping an exit route in mind, you significantly reduce your chance of getting stuck in a truly dangerous moment. One aspect that often goes overlooked in discussions about civil unrest is the possibility that emergency services become overwhelmed or simply can't reach you in time, which means even if you only suffer a minor injury like a nasty cut or a bad sprain, you might need to handle it yourself. That's why having a robust first aid setup and at least basic training in how to patch someone up is so crucial. I'm not talking about a flimsy kit with 2 band-aids and a single alcohol wipe. I'm talking about a kit that has the supplies needed to clean deeper wounds, stop serious bleeding, and maybe even address burns or fractures temporarily. If you can, sign up for a local first aid or CPR class. Some classes also cover trauma care or wilderness medicine, which teach you how to improvise if you don't have professional medical tools. Knowing how to use a tourniquet properly could be a lifesaver if you or someone near you ends up with a severe bleed, and in a period of unrest, ambulances might be delayed or prevented from entering hot zones. A first aid kit that includes sterile gauze, adhesive wraps, disinfectants, splints, and plenty of gloves can help you manage injuries under conditions where every second counts. Consider medication needs too. If you have family members with specific conditions like asthma or severe allergies, keep spare inhalers or EpiPens. If someone needs daily meds, talk with your doctor about building a bit of a surplus so that a closed pharmacy or supply disruption doesn't put you at risk. This also extends to over-the-counter meds for pain relief, allergies, upset stomach, because you never know if you'll be dealing with stress-related sickness when the hospital is slammed with urgent cases. Hygiene is part of medical readiness because if waste management halts, or if water is scarce, diseases can spread. Stock up on hand sanitizer, baby wipes, and disinfectants. If you expect events to get chaotic, designate a space in your home as a makeshift sick room for isolation in case someone falls ill or is exposed to contaminants, because controlling infection in close quarters might be one of the biggest challenges if emergency services aren't accessible. A little advanced planning can stop a minor ailment from becoming catastrophic simply because help wasn't around the corner. In a crisis, even if you're well-stocked and physically prepared, you can easily be overwhelmed if you're alone, or if you live in a neighborhood where everyone minds their own business until everything falls apart. So forging a reliable support network is more valuable than most people realize. You don't need a formal group with uniforms or a fancy name, but you do want a handful of people you trust, who share a basic preparedness mindset and who are willing to pool information, resources, and labor to keep everyone safer. Start by casually talking to your neighbors and seeing if there's interest in a group text for security alerts, or if they'd be up for meeting once a month to discuss local developments. This can start small, like letting each other know if someone's traveling out of town so others can keep an eye on their place. Over time, you might discover that one neighbor is great at DIY repairs, another is medically trained, someone else has gardening expertise, and you realize that by coming together, you all benefit from each other's specialties. You don't want to wait until the streets are blocked off or until protests are raging to figure out who can watch your kids or who has an extra generator. Sharing resources doesn't mean you have to hand over everything you own. It just means working out some arrangements, maybe on a rotating basis. For example, if you're patrolling the block one night, someone else can do it the following night, so nobody gets exhausted standing watch. Or if you all pitch in a small amount of money to purchase a big water purification system that's stored centrally. That might help the whole block if tap water gets shut down or contaminated. Moreover, the emotional aspect of having people around who you trust is invaluable. In times of fear and crisis, morale can dip quickly, and friendly faces go a long way in preventing panic or isolation. People can share updates, talk through problems, and just be there to listen. Social cohesion becomes a massive advantage when everything else is uncertain. And sure, you might encounter folks who think you're overreacting, but often as events heat up, those same individuals come around and realize it's better to plan together than face the unknown alone. Keeping that supportive environment means you're not just a random target in an unruly crowd. You're part of a well-informed, connected circle. You've now heard the warning signs, the fortification techniques, the necessity of building up supplies, and the importance of having a personal plan to either stay put or leave in a hurry. And we've talked about how to handle yourself around crowds, how to approach self-defense and medical readiness, and how to turn an isolated neighborhood into a supportive network of people who actually look out for one another, which is exactly the kind of strategy that can mean the difference between chaos and calm for you and your loved ones if tensions explode faster than you expect. You might feel like there's a lot to do, and in some ways, there is. But every single step you take, whether it's installing a better lock, picking up an extra case of water, mapping a second route out of your neighborhood, or talking with your neighbor about forming a watch group, will move you closer to being able to handle the unexpected without getting blindsided. If you found this video helpful and you want to push yourself to take action, then let me urge you to do something tangible today that sets you on the path. Maybe you order a few basic supplies, maybe you reinforce your door, or maybe you share this video with someone who really needs to hear it so you can strategize together. These times are uncertain, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. We gain power by staying aware, by being prepared, and by coordinating with the people around us. And it's all about moving forward with confidence, not living in fear, because readiness means you can face adversity with a calm mind and a plan in hand, rather than panicking when the headlines catch everyone else off guard. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and if you haven't hit subscribe yet, now's a great time, because we'll be digging deeper into these subjects with more tips and best practices, and we're going to keep building up this conversation around community and preparedness. So stay alert, take those crucial steps before you need them, and keep looking out for each other, because at the end of the day, that's exactly how we'll weather the storms that come our way, together and ready for whatever tomorrow has in store.